The day the sky darkened over Morion 7, the galaxy held its breath. For centuries, the United Federation of Civilized Species, UFCS, had stood as a beacon of peace, uniting hundreds of species under its banner. Its core worlds, like Morion 7, were sanctuaries of tranquility, a place where art, science, and diplomacy thrived. No one had ever thought that danger could come so suddenly, so silently, from the void. It began as an anomaly. The long-range sensors at the edge of the system detected movement, a cluster of ships, vast and unidentifiable, entering their space. At first, the officials on Morion 7 dismissed it as a rogue asteroid cluster or outdated equipment. But within hours, the truth became undeniable. The fleet was massive and it was headed straight for them. Inside the gleaming halls of the UFCS Council on Morion 7, panic brewed. The chamber, normally a space of calm deliberation, was filled with hushed whispers and raised voices. The fleet's energy signatures were unlike anything in their extensive databases, chaotic, raw, and unpredictable. There was no clear aesthetic to the ship's designs, no unified construction style. They seemed as if they were cobbled together from dozens of different technologies. "This is a threat," barked Counselor Ravoa, a pale-skinned Avenari with iridescent wings. "They've bypassed every patrol system." "How? And why now?" High Chancellor Ryvak, a towering Arcturian with a stoic demeanor, raised a hand to silence the room. "We do not yet know their intent. Let us not assume hostility where there may be none." But even Ryvak's words could not quell the unease. In a galaxy that prided itself on diplomacy and unity, the concept of violence was foreign to most UFCS citizens. Wars were relics of a distant past, buried in the history books of long-lost civilizations. The idea that a fleet might arrive with hostile intent was unthinkable, or at least it had been until now. The fleet's arrival was heralded by a sharp distortion in the skies over Morion 7. The ships were unlike anything the people had ever seen, hulking, angular monstrosities that exuded menace. They descended in perfect formation, blotting out the twin suns of the planet. Their hulls shimmered with mismatched alloys, their weapons bristling with energy so volatile it seemed to hum in the air. Crowds gathered in the capital's central plaza, staring upward in silent awe and terror. News drones buzzed overhead, broadcasting the spectacle to the rest of the galaxy. Then came the transmission. The voice that resonated across every channel was deep and guttural, yet perfectly intelligible, carrying an edge of challenge. "To the United Federation of Civilized Species, we are the Ashen Concord. We are the voices you ignored, the hands you exploited, the lives you deemed unworthy. The age of your ignorance ends today. Prepare to listen or prepare to fall." Panic erupted. Citizens scattered, fearing an imminent attack. The UFCS defense grid activated, enveloping the planet in a shimmering dome of protective energy. But the Ashen Concord made no move to fire. The fleet simply hung there, a silent reminder of its power. In the council chambers, the debate turned to chaos. The Ashen Concord? What are they talking about? Counselor Velayer, a reptilian Jarek, hissed. "We've never even heard of them." A young diplomat stepped forward, her voice trembling but firm. "The Ashen Concord is a coalition of Deathworlders." The room fell silent. Deathworlders. The word itself was almost taboo in UFCS circles. Deathworlds were planets so hostile that most species couldn't imagine surviving there, let alone thriving. Planets with constant volcanic eruptions, acidic rains, predatory megafauna, and brutal ecosystems that demanded adaptability, resilience, and ingenuity. Their inhabitants were anomalies, freaks of evolution who had carved out lives where no life should exist. Deathworlders were considered an evolutionary curiosity, a minor footnote in the grand story of the galaxy. They were not part of the UFCS. Why would they be? They were primitive, dangerous, unfit for diplomacy. But now they had come together, and they had come here. The diplomat continued. "The Concord is made up of humans, Torvax, Faraxi, and others. For centuries, their planets have been stripped for resources, their people dismissed as savages. Perhaps this is retaliation. Ryvak's deep voice cut through the tension. Send a diplomatic envoy. We must attempt dialogue. And if they refuse? Counselor Ravoa demanded. Then we prepare for the worst. As the first diplomatic ship departed Morian 7 to make contact with the fleet, the people below could only watch and wait. The Ashen Concord's message echoed in their minds, each word a harbinger of a galaxy turned upside down. For the first time in centuries, the UFCS faced an enemy they could not categorize, predict, or control. And as the Deathworlder fleet loomed overhead, one thing became clear: nothing would ever be the same again. The diplomatic envoy approached the Ashen Concord fleet with trepidation. Encased in the sleek, polished design typical of UFCS ships, the envoy's vessel was a stark contrast to the Concord's hulking, mismatched warships. Every sensor blared warnings, analyzing energy readings that shifted and spiked unpredictably. It was as if the ships themselves were alive, adapting to whatever threats might come their way. As the envoy's ship docked within the largest vessel, a massive construct known simply as Eclipse, the UFCS delegates prepared themselves. They had never met Deathworlders before. Stories of these beings painted them as brutish, unpredictable, and violent. But the reality that greeted them was far more unsettling. The docking bay was filled with representatives of the Ashen Concord, each species a testament to the harsh worlds they called home. Humans stood tall and resolute, their armor patched and battle-worn yet exuding practicality. Beside them loomed Torvax, reptilian behemoths with scales thick as starship plating and eyes that burned with sharp intelligence. Pharaxi, feline predators with sleek fur and twitching tails, watched with wary precision, their claws tapping rhythmically against their weapons. As the UFCS delegates stepped out, the room fell silent. The air was thick with tension, broken only by the sound of boots on metal as a human woman approached. "I am Captain Elise Oren," she said, her voice firm and authoritative. "Representative of the Ashen Concord. Speak your piece." The UFCS leader, Counselor Varen, cleared his throat, attempting to mask his unease. "We come in peace, seeking understanding. Your arrival has disrupted the harmony of our world. We must know your purpose." Captain Oren's expression hardened. "Disrupted? Harmony? You dare speak of harmony when your Federation has brought us nothing but suffering." Her words were a spark in a powder keg. Around her, the other Deathworlders rumbled in agreement, their voices low but filled with suppressed anger. Varen raised his hands in a placating gesture. "What suffering? We have never interfered with your people." "Never interfered?" Oren's voice rose. "You strip our planets bare. You take our resources, claiming we're too primitive to deserve them. You label us savages because we do what you can't. Survive where life itself fights back." She gestured to her surroundings. "We are the children of Deathworlds, planets that tried to kill us every day. And you, civilized, fragile beings, mocked us, ignored us, and left us to fend for ourselves. Now we demand what is ours. Justice, recognition, and equality." Varen hesitated, but the weight of her words pressed down on him. The UFCS had long dismissed Deathworlders as insignificant. Their planets had been treated as little more than galactic mining sites, their people as obstacles to progress. Yet standing here, in the heart of the Ashen Concord, it was impossible to ignore their strength, their unity. "You want equality," Varen said cautiously. "But unity cannot be built on threats." "Threats?" Oren's lips curled into a bitter smile. "This is no threat. It's a promise. The era of your ignorance is over. Listen to us, or prepare to face the consequences." The UFCS envoy returned to Morian 7 shaken. The Ashen Concord was not just a fleet. It was a revolution, and the Federation had no idea how to stop it. The skies over Morian 7 were still choked with the Ashen Concord fleet, their massive ships casting long shadows over the UFCS capital. Days had passed since the initial ultimatum, and the tension between the two forces had grown unbearable. Inside the UFCS council chambers, the debate raged. "They've already shown their intent," Counselor Ravoa snapped, her iridescent wings flaring in agitation. They demand reparations for actions we took centuries ago. This is extortion, not diplomacy. High Chancellor Ryvac remained calm, though his deep-set eyes betrayed his concern. Their grievances are not without merit. The question is, do we negotiate, or do we escalate? Negotiate, scoffed Councillor Velayer, his reptilian tail lashing. They're predators, warriors from hostile worlds. If we show weakness, they'll tear us apart. In the end, diplomacy faltered. The Council's decision was split, but fear tipped the scales. Orders were quietly sent to deploy UFCS fleets across key systems, securing trade routes and preparing defenses. The Ashen Concord's message was clear, but the Federation's pride and fear refused to bend. The Deathworlders, however, had anticipated this. The first skirmish erupted near Morian's Ring, a sprawling orbital station that served as a hub for commerce and defense. A UFCS patrol, composed of sleek frigates and automated drones, intercepted a small Concorde convoy. What began as a routine scan escalated when a drone, misreading the Deathworlders' unconventional energy signatures, fired a warning shot. The Deathworlders reacted with precision and ferocity. Their ships, though mismatched in design, moved with terrifying coordination. One vessel, a hulking beast of reinforced metal and exposed weaponry, absorbed the brunt of the UFCS assault, while its smaller counterparts outmaneuvered the Federation ships. The Concorde's tactics were unlike anything the UFCS had encountered. Their ships adapted mid-battle, redirecting power to counterattacks and exploiting weaknesses in the Federation's rigid formations. The Deathworlders had turned the chaos of their worlds into a strategic advantage, using creativity and unpredictability to overwhelm the more technologically advanced UFCS fleet. The battle ended in a stalemate. Morian's Ring remained intact, but the cost was high. Half of the UFCS patrol was lost, and the Deathworlders had proven they were not to be underestimated. The Concorde convoy retreated, but the message was clear. The Ashen Concorde was not afraid to fight. Back on Morian 7, the Council was in disarray. News of the skirmish had spread, and the public was losing faith in the Federation's ability to protect them. Protests erupted across the core worlds, with citizens demanding answers. Why had the Deathworlders come? Why had the UFCS ignored them for so long? Meanwhile, within the Ashen Concorde fleet, Captain Elise Oren and her fellow leaders assessed their next steps. The skirmish had proven their strength, but they knew war with the UFCS would be catastrophic for both sides. "We don't want destruction," Oren said, her voice weary but resolute. "But if they leave us no choice, we'll show them just how far Deathworlders can go." The battle lines were drawn. The Ashen Concorde's arrival had shattered the illusion of peace, and the galaxy teetered on the brink of war. The air was heavy in the UFCS council chambers as High Chancellor Ryvac stared at the holographic projection of the Deathworlder fleet. Each ship was a testament to survival against insurmountable odds, and their mere presence above Morian 7 was a challenge to everything the Federation stood for. "This can't go on," Ryvac finally said, his deep voice cutting through the room. "We've seen their strength. If we escalate, we risk a war we may not win." Councillor Ravoa flared her wings in frustration. "And if we give in, we risk losing our standing across the galaxy. The UFCS has never yielded to demands, and we cannot start now." "They aren't asking for conquest," Ryvac countered. "They're asking for acknowledgement, for justice. Have we truly been so blind to their plight?" The room fell silent, the weight of his words settling like a heavy fog. The Federation had long prided itself on its enlightenment, yet its treatment of Deathworlders was a glaring contradiction. Even now, the Council struggled to see them as equals rather than anomalies. Ryvac turned to the young diplomat who had first identified the Ashen Concorde. "Initiate a second contact. Offer neutral ground for negotiations. If they are as determined to avoid full-scale war as we are, they will accept." Days later, on a barren moon orbiting Morian 7, representatives of the UFCS and the Ashen Concorde met face-to-face. The chosen site was stark and unremarkable, a deliberate choice to signify equality. Captain Elise Oren stood at the forefront of the Deathworlder delegation, her gaze sharp as she regarded the UFCS leaders. Behind her, a mix of humans, Torvax, and Faraxi stood tall, their presence a silent testament to the unyielding strength of their coalition. High Chancellor Ryvak led the Federation delegation, his imposing figure matched only by the weight of the responsibility on his shoulders. Behind him, the UFCS representatives were less certain, their gazes shifting uneasily as they faced the beings they had dismissed for so long. Ryvak was the first to speak. Captain Oren, we recognize that mistakes have been made. The Federation's treatment of Deathworlders has been unjust. We are here to listen and to find a path forward. Oren's expression was unreadable, but the tension in her posture eased slightly. You say you want to listen. Then hear this, we don't seek vengeance. We seek acknowledgement of the harm done to our worlds, reparations for what was stolen, and most of all, a place at the table, a seat in your Federation. The UFCS delegation exchanged uneasy glances. Granting membership to the Deathworlders would mean dismantling centuries of bias and reevaluating the Federation's core principles. Ryvak nodded solemnly. If the Ashen Concord joins the UFCS, we must do so as equals. That will require changes. Not just for you, but for us as well. The negotiations stretched into hours, each side navigating the delicate balance between justice and reconciliation. In the end, neither left wholly satisfied, but both left with hope. The Ashen Concord had forced the Federation to confront its failures, and in doing so, they had planted the seeds of a fragile but transformative alliance. The galaxy would never be the same.